Hello my friends and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be the worst books I read in 2023 and also the books that I DNF'd. So I actually don't have too many books that I absolutely did not love in 2023. I feel like I had a year of mediocre books and books that I just didn't feel anything for, whether that's positive or negative. So when I was making this list, I didn't have too many, which is why I'm combining the worst with my DNFs, because I do consider the books I DNF'd to be some of the worst books that I did try and attempt in 2023. But I know some people would probably comment and say, could it really be the worst book you read if you didn't actually read the whole thing? So I decided to combine worst and DNFs together to make one video, so that way it would be slightly longer since I didn't have too long of a list. Yeah, these are the books that I just really did not like in 2023. They made me feel really strongly. I had very big visceral reactions to them, and those reactions were not positive. They were obviously very, very negative. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for the intro. That's all I have to say to introduce the worst books I read. And I guess we're just gonna go ahead and get started. So first up is a book that I know a lot of people love. I think a lot of people really love this book. I've heard really good things about it, which is why I bought it. And I'm really sad it didn't work out for me, but honestly, I really did not like this book, and that is Theme Music by T. Marie Vandelli. This book is about the main character, Dixie, who was basically the only survivor of her family massacre. Her whole family was killed by the dad, and then he killed himself. And then years later, the house is for sale, so she ends up moving into it and basically is haunted by her family. I think my problem with this, one, is it's basically just a Amityville ripoff. If you're very familiar with the story, I feel like you will 100% know where this book is going. For the most part, I think there are some changes that have been made, but it's honestly such a big copy of Amityville, and I'm just someone that's really tired of seeing books blatantly just try to recreate Amityville or The Haunting of Hill House. I know those are two very well loved and like well-known stories, especially haunted house stories in horror. So I understand that people get their inspiration for them, but I think the problem is I want something different. I want to see something new from the haunted house genre. I want to see people, you know, stepping outside of the box. I want to be surprised. I want to be shocked. I want to be like really interested. And when you can fully see where the story is going from basically the beginning, I was just super frustrated. I felt like it was extremely obvious what the book was trying to do. And honestly, I feel like it didn't even do it very well. I feel like the execution was pretty poor, at least in my opinion. Obviously, these are all my opinions. My second thing about this book is the main character, Dixie. I just couldn't stand her. I thought she was incredibly stupid. I thought she was just really irritating and aggravating, and I just kind of like wanted to yell at her and say, hey, open your eyes, girl, what are you doing? Like, pay attention, the red flags are right there. It's like a big neon sign flashing in your face telling you what's going on, and she just wasn't getting the hint, and it was so infuriating when the main characters are that dumb. I think I just had really high expectations for this book because, again, I know people love this one. It has a lot of high praise. I know I've seen it on TikTok a lot. So, I mean, I know this book is loved by many. So I think I went into it expecting something like really exciting and different and unique. And what I got is really aggravating characters, super predictable plot, and basically the Amityville. I was honestly mad that I didn't DNF this one. I felt like finishing it to the end was pointless and there was no real reason for me to have kept reading, but I did anyways, so that's on me. The next book is one that I actually just recently read. It was part of my 23 books for 2023 challenge, and I had very low expectations going into this one. Like, I knew people people absolutely hated it, so I kind of knew that I was either going to be in the minority and love it, or I was gonna go with the majority and hate it, and unfortunately I am with the majority, and that is The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. I don't understand this book. Like, I don't know what this was trying to do. I don't know what this was trying to be. I feel like this is extremely mismarketed. I don't think it's horror. I don't think it's a thriller. I don't really know what this is, but to me, it wasn't very good. I don't even know how to explain this one. It's written like a memoir. There's another person like inserting their thoughts onto the memoir, so there's like writing in the margins. It's like their opinion on them reading the manuscript of the memoir. We're reading the, like, I guess the final copy is what we're reading. We're reading the final copy after everything's been done. I don't know, okay, but this book is so pretentious. Like, honestly, I don't understand what this book was trying to do. I'm assuming it was trying to do like a literary coming-of-age story with like a little hint sprinkling of horror. But honestly, I personally don't even think there's like a sprinkling of horror. Like, I don't even get the horror from this book. Like, I don't even think horror touches this book, in my opinion. Like, I can't even see it. Like, it didn't exist. I don't know. It's supposed to be like a vampire story, I guess, and I would highly recommend not assuming it's a vampire story, because the vampire part is like not even really that relevant, honestly. Like, I don't know what this book was doing. I was bored to tears while reading it. Like, honestly, just bored out of my mind. I was trying not to fall asleep. I was skimming pages because honestly, Art, the main character, he is so insufferable to read from that, like, I just didn't even care what he was saying. I was like, I don't care. None of this has any relevance. I literally do not care what you have to say. The other character that kind of like is writing in the margins that you're reading like their thoughts as they're reading the memoir, I kind of liked that aspect. But honestly, I don't know how much it actually added to the story, in my personal opinion. I feel like neither character was really that exciting or that interesting, and I feel like the overall story just really didn't feel cohesive to me. So I just think that I'm in the category of I didn't really get the point of this book. I don't really get what it's trying to say. I don't really get what it's doing. It was really frustrating to read. I kind of wish I had DNF'd this one as well, but I did want to see if it was going to get better, but it didn't. So up next we have Ring by Koji Suzuki. I was really disappointed by this one, mostly because The Ring is such an iconic horror movie. The Japanese version and the American version, they are so well loved. I feel like a lot of people actually watch The Ring as like their first horror movie. I've seen that happen a lot, and I think it's such like an impactful horror movie. I think the American remake is kind of the perfect movie to sum up 2000s horror as well. So I just think I had like really high expectations going into the book. I really was like looking forward to reading this one. I wanted to see what the differences were. I wanted to read the source material and see, you know, what it was like. I was just very excited, and wow, I was so disappointed. One of the big things that was like a huge turnoff for me in this book is the main character is a man in the book. If you've seen the movies, the main character is a woman, and I understand 100% why they made that change, because he is such a jerk. Like, he is misogynistic. He's just not a nice guy. He's really mean to his wife. Like, he's not very likable, which I like unlikable characters, but I think there's a difference between like unlikable characters and then just straight terrible characters, and he's just a terrible character. His best friend that like helps him in the book, he is also a terrible human, and he talks about some of the things he's done to women, and it's just like, what is this? Like, what is going on? So that was like super disappointing. I think the other disappointing part of this book though is Sadako's background. I really don't understand what the author was doing with Sadako's background. Honestly, I don't think it really makes that much sense. I think it's kind of weird, but not in a good way, and I 100% see why both the Japanese version and the American version of the movie changed a lot of the storyline, because I just don't think it really works in the book. I think it's just really weird and kind of just lame, honestly. In my personal opinion, I think this is a case where the movies did such a good job because they took the actual scary parts of the book and then made them 10 times scarier, especially with the visuals that the movie has, you know, obviously because a book, you know, you're reading it. But I feel like the movie was just able to capture the actual true horror of this kind of story. I like the changes that were made to Sadako's background, and of course I like that the lead character is a woman. I think those were all like super smart choices, and I think the movies just take the best parts of the book and then amplify it to make it 10 times better story. So it was just so disappointing, and honestly I've just learned this year that Koji Suzuki is not an author for me. I don't like his characters, I don't really like his stories, I just don't really vibe with him. So I was very disappointed with Ring, and I will definitely not be continuing the series. Then we have The Third Parent by Elias Withrow. This is a Reddit story that was turned into a full-length novel, which I know has a bad reputation a lot of times in the book world because it's just not very successful. The only book that I've actually loved that was a Reddit story that was turned into a full-length novel that I felt did a very good job is Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. So that's kind of like the book that I hold as the standard, and then I compare other books to it. And unfortunately this one just didn't work for me. It's a very bizarre story. It has a home invasion element, which is kind of why I was drawn to it and why I was excited about it and why I wanted to give it a try. I wanted to read more books with home invasion, but I feel like the home invasion aspect of this story is very odd. It's about a family that gets a knock on their door, and this weird, strange guy named Tommy Taffy barges his way in and then starts setting these rules and expectations from the family, and they have to follow his rules and what he says, or, you know, bad things are gonna happen. And the book does get fairly brutal and, you know, messed up and disturbing, but I think the problem is the overarching story is just very silly. Like, Tommy Taffy himself, I think, isn't a very good villain. I think that he just kind of lacks a lot of things that make him super scary, and a lot of his dialogue and a lot of the way the story is written isn't very good at making Tommy Taffy a very scary villain. It comes off as a comedy and just kind of silly goofy, ha ha ha. And again, his name is Tommy Taffy. Like, Tommy Taffy is not a scary name. I'm sorry. It sounds stupid. It sounds lame, and that's kind of how I felt about the book. I wasn't scared, or, you know, I think there were like maybe 2 moments where I was like, whoa, that's disturbing, but I think because of the execution of the overall book, those were buried under all the silly, not well done parts, and you kind of forgot about them, which is not what you want from a disturbing book. You want that disturbing part to like last in your brain. You want to remember it. You want to have to like think about it constantly. I feel like this book didn't succeed in that. I think the other problem that this book has, which is very common for Reddit stories, because when you have to finish and come up with more to make it a full novel, it just feels very disconnected. And with the second half of this novel, it felt completely different. It did not feel like it matched in what the first half was doing, and the explanation for everything I felt like was just really dumb. Honestly, I don't think it helped the book's case in trying to be scary or horrific. I think it made it even sillier than it already was, which is kind of a problem. So for me, this is a case where I would have rather been left in the dark and not had an explanation than to have had the explanation that was given to me, which is something that I usually don't ever say, but this is the time when I would have preferred to have been left with questions. And I don't know, overall, I just think the writing, the overall execution of it, the story itself just didn't really work for me, unfortunately. And honestly, every time I think about it, it just makes me want to like roll my eyes, and that's not something that I think is a good thing after I've read a book. This next one is a very well-loved horror novel, and I am so sorry if you all love this one, but I just did not like it. And that is Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This is a sci-fi horror about killer mermaids, and I knew going into this one I wasn't really going to like it. We read this for my Patreon book club, and I just knew it wasn't going to be for me. I'm not a sci-fi person. I like water horror, but I feel like water horror isn't usually done the way I want it to be done. So personally, I just had a really big feeling that I was not going to enjoy this book. And I was right. It is way too long. It is way too boring. I feel like the creepy moments that this book does have were really great, but they are so far and few in between that you're just left waiting for something to happen, and then when things do start happening, it's just cut off too quickly. That happens with the end as well. Once action starts happening and things start going and progressing, it's cut off, and then the book just kind of has a very lackluster ending for this one. So I was extremely disappointed because I was very interested in the killer mermaid aspect, and I did find some of it very interesting, but I just wish that the book had focused more on being scary than the like science aspect, I guess, and the people doing the experiments and the scientists and their research and stuff like that. I didn't really care about any of that. I wasn't very interested. I didn't care about any of the characters. I would have just been fine with less of the humans and more of the mermaids, and I wasn't really given that. I just think this is a book that wasn't for me, but again, I knew that going into it, so I'm not surprised that I didn't like this one. I know so many people love it. I know this is like a fan favorite. Totally get it. For me, it was just way too long, too boring, not enough horror, too much science. So that's it for the books that I actually finished. Now we're moving into DNFs, and the first book was Hex. Another well-loved horror story, a witchy story, which is what I was super excited for because I do love witchy horror, so I had high expectations for this one. I think there was something about this translation that I just could not get into. I don't know if it was just the writing or the writing plus the translation, but this book is so slow. It's so boring. I didn't care about the story at all. The writing also had a weird like misogynistic undertone to it, and like there was a lot about boobs and nipples in this story, and I was just like, what is going on? What is the point of this? Why is this relevant to the story? And I just couldn't keep reading it. I know everyone says that the ending is worth it, but my partner ended up finishing the book for me. He told me how it ends. I'm glad I DNF'd. I don't think the ending would have swayed my opinion. It definitely didn't make me feel regret that I DNF'd it, so I just think this is a personal preference in terms of writing style, and for me, this one and I did not mesh. Speaking of writing style that I really didn't like, this next one is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay, and I DNF'd this one really early on. I think I only made it to page like 82 or something, but the writing style of this was so hard to follow. It jumped around a lot, and it made me feel like I was a ping pong ball getting like whipped back and forth because I just didn't know what was going on. Like, sometimes we were in the past, and then we were in the present, and then we were back in the past, and then we were back in the present, and I was like, I can't keep up. I have no idea what any of this has to do with anything. It felt like the author was going on tangents that had nothing to do with the plot, and I was just getting so frustrated, and I just had to quit. I had to stop. I had to put it away because it was a pretty long book. It was a thick book, and I was like, I am not gonna be able to read this whole thing and actually understand it. I don't even remember what the plot is about. I think it has something to do with a podcast or something, but yeah, I could not handle the writing style, so I DNF'd this one very, very, very early on. The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett. I was really looking forward to this one because I was sent this book along with the appeal from Atria earlier this year, and I read the appeal, absolutely loved it, decided to read this one, had to put it away because this one was so different from the appeal and in not a good way, and I just did not enjoy it at all. This one's about like a secret code in a children's book, and this man who just got out of prison is looking into the disappearance of his teacher who was looking into the secret code that was in the children's book. And the whole book is written in voice recordings, and it was just not the formatting I would have preferred. I really enjoyed the appeal because the appeal was written in like emails and texts and like that kind of thing, and I preferred that. I liked looking through the emails and the texts. I felt like I was being nosy and I was like getting into people's business, and I really, really enjoyed that. There was a key in the Twyford Code to help you understand how to, you know, dissect the voice messages, and it got so confusing and I was getting so jumbled up that I had no idea what I was reading, and I wasn't that interested in the secret code. I didn't think it was that exciting or fun for me, and I felt like the book was going down a path that I wasn't that interested in, so I just decided to DNF it and not waste my time with that one anymore. The last book is Jawbone by Monica Ojeda, and honestly, I DNF'd this book like 3 times. I just kept starting it and then not going back to it, and I can't even tell you what this book is about because it was so confusing. The writing style was all over the place. I'm pretty sure that there's like an author's note at the end of the book that explains why the author wrote in this way. I just could not get my brain to comprehend the story that was trying to be told. I could not follow along. I could not get interested. It just felt like a lot of stream of consciousness and just like big blocky text, and I was just losing interest every sentence I was reading, and there was just no way that I was gonna actually finish it. I obviously started it so many times. I'm pretty sure I started it the year before too, in 2022, so I don't even think I DNF'd it just this year. I think I also DNF'd it last year. So last time I attempted this book was for the 24-hour horror-a-thon with Ashley's Little Library. I was a co-host, and this was the buddy read that we were all reading, and I did attempt to read it. That was actually the last time that I picked that book up, and I did get like 30 pages or so. Maybe I'm overestimating myself, but I did get a little bit farther in it that time, but I just couldn't keep reading it, so I DNF'd it for the last time in April, and I haven't picked it up since, and I just know I'll never pick it up again. So unfortunately, that one was a miss for me. I do know some people really, really loved it, but honestly, I couldn't handle the writing. And those are all the worst books I read and the books that I DNF'd this year. I don't DNF too frequently. I do try to persevere and read the whole book, even though I usually hate it, but I do attempt to finish the whole book, which I want to get better about because I don't like doing that. Those were the worst books I read in 2023. Those are some of the books that I couldn't even finish because I didn't like them that much, and yeah, I was pretty disappointed with a lot of books I read this year, but these are like the worst of the worst. So I hope you enjoyed me ranting about these books that I didn't like. Feel free to let me know if you've read any of these, and if you agree or disagree, go ahead and let me know what your worst book or books of the year were. I would love to know, and we can talk about how bad some of these were in the comments. If you did enjoy this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. That way I can make sure to do this again in 2024. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I also have a Patreon linked down in the description box. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, manga, all that good fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you're having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!